guarding your gold, how to protect your wisdom and energy, mindset and motivation for success. As the years gracefully unfold, a remarkable shift often occurs within us. We find ourselves yearning for tranquility over turmoil, seeking clarity amidst the chaos, and valuing genuine connection more than ever. But here's a challenging truth that many hesitate to voice. Sometimes as we navigate our golden years, the most significant emotional pitfalls can arise from those we've known the longest. Yes, even family. This isn't about casting blame, but about fostering awareness. We're about to explore the subtle yet crucial dynamics you need to recognize to protect your hard-earned peace and well-being. As we grow older, something rather fascinating happens. We begin to place a higher value on peace over constant noise, clarity over chaos, and genuine sincerity even above long-standing bloodlines. But there's a truth here that most people won't openly admit. Sometimes the individuals who pose the greatest emotional risk in your old age are the very ones you've known the longest. And yes, that can include family. Now let me start by introducing the first kind of person you absolutely must learn to avoid in your later years: the guilt tripper. And I really want you to hear this with your heart wide open, because for so many people, this particular dynamic comes wrapped in what looks like love. It often sounds like genuine care. It can even wear the familiar face of family. But guilt, when it's wielded as a tool of manipulation, is nothing short of poison, pure and simple. You see, guilt trippers don't typically scream at you. They don't need to resort to that. Instead, they whisper. They let out heavy sighs. They use silence almost like a weapon. Imagine this. You tell them no, and suddenly you're painted as ungrateful, selfish, or even worse, uncaring. And all of this happens simply because you finally decided to draw a necessary line in the sand. All because you said, "I can't do that anymore." Or perhaps, "I truly need some time for myself." And if you're not careful, you could spend your precious golden years constantly apologizing merely for existing. These are the people who will subtly make you feel like you owe them something simply for aging, as if you've somehow become a burden just by being alive. It's a subtle tactic, but it's incredibly deadly to your peace. It might manifest in comments like, "Well, I guess I'll just have to figure it out all by myself since you seem too busy." Or you might hear, "I took care of you once. Now look at how you treat me." Let me tell you something incredibly important, and I want you to hold on to this truth. Your life is not a debt that needs to be repaid to anyone, not even to your own children, not to your siblings, and not even to your oldest friends. You don't owe anyone your peace of mind. You don't owe them your health, and you certainly don't owe them the precious energy you barely have left just so they can feel powerful, in control, or morally superior. That isn't love. That is manipulation, cleverly dressed in emotional currency. The older you become, the more profoundly you realize that time is your most sacred currency. And guilt trippers, they are professional time thieves. They will skillfully pull you into conversations that leave you feeling completely drained, into obligations that leave you utterly exhausted, and into relationships that leave you questioning your own inherent worth. You might hear phrases like, "If you really love me, you would do this." But listen carefully. Love is not proven through sheer exhaustion. Love is not measured by how much of yourself you're willing to abandon. You don't prove your love by shrinking or making yourself small. You prove love by living in your truth. And here's what's even more dangerous. Guilt trippers often train you to question your own reality. You start to wonder, maybe I am the one being selfish. Am I genuinely not doing enough? That's precisely how they win. It's how they keep you tethered to their emotional leash. But freedom truly begins when you recognize that emotional manipulation is, at its core, a form of control. And in old age, you simply don't have the time or energy to be controlled. You need space to heal, to breathe, to reflect, and ultimately, to live. You've already spent decades being there for others, raising children, supporting your families, showing up diligently at work, giving everything you had. Now the time has unequivocally come to reclaim what's left of your energy for you. This isn't about becoming cold, nor is it about becoming bitter. It's about becoming free. I understand this might sound harsh to some, especially within cultures where family ties are considered paramount. I'm not suggesting you cut people off simply because they're difficult. What I am saying is that you must protect yourself from people who consistently use guilt as a leash. That's a crucial distinction. That isn't love. That's control wrapped in the guise of familiarity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can possibly do is to disappoint expectations that were never healthy or reasonable to begin with. And here's a profound truth. A lot of people are afraid to admit this, but just because someone is your family doesn't automatically mean they're healthy for your spirit. Let me repeat that because it's vital. Just because someone is your family doesn't mean they're good for your emotional and spiritual well-being. In this precious season of your life, you are not responsible for fixing everyone. You are not responsible for holding the entire family together at the severe cost of your own mental and emotional health. You're not here to play the role of referee, therapist, or an emotional punching bag. You are here to live, finally, truly, and fully. You don't need to constantly explain your boundaries to people who are never going to respect them in the first place. You don't need to justify your need for peace. You just need to claim it. You've earned it through all the storms you've weathered, through the heartbreaks you've endured, through the many years you stayed silent when you probably should have spoken up. Through the countless nights you gave when you had absolutely nothing left to give, you have earned this peace with your life. Don't ever trade it for guilt. If someone genuinely loves you, they will want your peace more than they want your compliance. Real love doesn't demand, it respects, it honors, it actively creates space. It doesn't guilt you into silence or submission. So as you move forward in life, please be mindful of the guilt trippers. They might approach you with warm smiles and soft, comforting words. But if your soul feels undeniably heavier after they leave, pay very close attention to that feeling. Your spirit knows what it's being pulled into. And if you ever need a reminder that it's perfectly okay to say no, here it is. Saying no to them is, in essence, saying yes to yourself. That's a trade worth making every single time. Now let's talk about another type of person you need to start consciously backing away from. The constant complainers, the never satisfied critics. These are the ones I often like to call energy vampires. You know exactly who I'm talking about, don't you? These are the individuals who could win the lottery and still somehow find something to complain about. The sun could be shining brightly, and they'll still tell you it's far too bright. You could be having a wonderfully peaceful day, and they'll show up with a dark cloud hovering over their head, attempting to drag you right under it with them. In your later years, your energy becomes an increasingly sacred resource, and you simply don't have the same vast reserves you once had. You've got to be incredibly selective about where you spend it, and just as importantly, who you spend it on. But energy vampires, they don't particularly care about that. They will talk your ear off for hours on end about everything that's supposedly wrong in their life, yet never once ask how you're doing, never once check in on your heart. And what's often worse is that they don't even seem to want solutions. They just want company in their misery. They effectively drain your spirit, not usually with loud arguments, but with a quiet, steady, relentless drip of negativity. It's constant. It's often subtle, and it's utterly exhausting. One phone call, one visit, one seemingly innocent conversation, and suddenly your entire day feels significantly heavier. You feel irritated, perhaps anxious or unsettled, and you often don't even consciously know why. That's precisely how it works. They offload their emotional weight onto you and then walk away feeling noticeably better, while you're left carrying bags of emotional baggage you didn't even pack. And I want to say this as plainly as I can. You were not put on this earth to be someone's emotional landfill. You were not created to absorb everyone else's darkness at the severe expense of your own precious light. That is not your job, especially not now, in this chapter of your life. I know some of these people might be incredibly close to you. Maybe they're even people you've known for decades. Perhaps it's a sibling, a lifelong friend, a neighbor, or even one of your own children. And undoubtedly, that makes it all the harder. But listen closely to this. Just because someone is a character in your life story doesn't mean they get to write your ending. If they consistently can't bring peace into your space, if all they ever do is drain, complain, and criticize, then it is absolutely okay, necessary even, to consciously create space. This isn't done out of anger, but out of profound self-respect, out of a deep and abiding understanding that your emotional well-being truly matters. And you no longer have the time or the desire to endlessly pour yourself out for people who only ever take. Do you ever notice how being around certain people just makes you feel smaller? How after talking to them, your mood perceptibly shifts. Your hope seems to shrink. And suddenly you start doubting things you felt perfectly clear about just moments ago. That's the quiet erosion of your peace happening in real time. That's the real cost of constant negativity. And trust me, it truly adds up over time. There are people who have gotten so accustomed to complaining that they don't even realize they're doing it anymore. Their entire identity seems to be built around what's wrong, what's missing, and who's to blame. And if you spend enough time with them, they'll subtly start convincing you to see life that way too. That's the real danger. They don't just drain you, they begin to reshape you. They mold your perspective with their pervasive bitterness. And if you're not careful, you'll start picking up that heavy weight without even consciously knowing it. You deserve to be around people who genuinely lift you, who challenge you in love, who speak life, not just loss, who remind you that even though the world can be messy, there's still so much incredible beauty in it. And if you don't currently have that in your circle, then maybe it's time to tighten that circle. Let me tell you something most people won't admit. Peace is actually louder than noise. Peace doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to constantly prove itself. But when it's gone, you feel its absence deeply. in your body, in your spirit, in your mind. Protecting your peace inherently means protecting your energy. And protecting your energy means consciously stepping back from people who treat your presence like a dumping ground for their dysfunction. You're not obligated to answer every single call. You're not obligated to listen to every single complaint. You're not required to carry what they steadfastly refuse to release. It is not unkind to protect your personal space. It is not rude to say, I love you, but I simply can't carry this with you today. That is wisdom. That is maturity. That is vital self-preservation. There comes a pivotal point in life where you have to stop apologizing for choosing peace. You have to stop feeling the need to explain why you'd rather sit in silence than in someone else's chaos. You have to stop feeling guilty for not engaging in endless cycles of criticism and complaints, because the truth is you've outgrown that noise. And that, my friend, is something to be incredibly proud of. You are entering a time in your life where your primary focus should be on healing, on reflecting, and on truly enjoying the moments you have left. Not spending them entangled in someone else's drama or perpetual misery. You've carried enough. You've sacrificed enough. And now your energy must be guarded like the precious treasure it is. So when the constant complainers come knocking, when the critics try to pull you back into their swirling vortex of negativity, remember this. Now let me take you into something a little more personal, because this one often stings a little deeper. It's about the people who only seem to show up when they need something. The users, the ones who treat your relationship much like a convenience store. They drop in when they're running low on something, grab what they need, and then disappear the second they've filled themselves up. And I want to be crystal clear. This isn't about being unwilling to help people. This is about recognizing when that help has clearly become a one-way street, when love has devolved into a mere transaction, when your presence only seems to matter when you're deemed useful. You've likely seen it before. Maybe it's someone who only calls when their car breaks down or when their rent is due. Maybe it's someone who unexpectedly pops back into your life just long enough to borrow money, borrow your time, or borrow your peace. And then they fade out again without even a simple thank you, let alone a genuine, how are you? And you try to give them the benefit of the doubt because that's just the kind of person you are. You've got a heart that naturally wants to see the best in people. You remember who they used to be, perhaps. You hold on to hope that one day they'll finally show up just to be with you, not because they need something from you, but here's what life will inevitably teach you if you're paying close attention. Some people will never show up unless there's something tangible in it for them. And that kind of relationship, no matter how long it's lasted or how deep the shared history might run, is simply not love. It's dependence, it's convenience. And it will leave you emotionally bankrupt if you don't learn how to firmly say no. One of the toughest lessons in old age is realizing that being needed is not the same as being loved. Let me repeat that, as it's a critical distinction. Being needed is not the same as being loved. Some folks only keep you around because you're easy to access, because you rarely say no, because they know your heart is big and your defenses are perhaps a little soft. And every time they come around, they pull a little more from you. And it's not just money or time they take. No, they take something far more valuable. They take your presence, your peace, your patience. And they consistently leave you emptier than when they arrived. And don't they always seem to have a good story too? A compelling reason, a plausible excuse, a heartfelt promise that this time will be different. And for a fleeting moment, you desperately want to believe it. You want to believe that they've genuinely changed. That maybe, just maybe, they're here this time because they truly care. Not just because they're desperate. But then, inevitably, it happens again. You give, they take, and as soon as their immediate problem is solved, they're gone. What's particularly dangerous is how easily this kind of lopsided relationship can wear you down over an extended period. It doesn't happen all at once. It's more of a slow, insidious erosion, a steady, relentless draining. You start feeling guilty for not being available 24/7. You start questioning yourself when you attempt to set boundaries. You wonder if maybe you're the one being too harsh. But deep down in your gut, you know the truth. You're being used and it hurts. There's a particular kind of silence that often settles in after someone's gotten what they wanted from you. A silence that starkly reminds you they weren't there for you. They were there for what you could give. And if you listen closely to that silence, it will teach you something profound. You deserve far more than being someone's backup plan. You deserve much more than being someone's emotional ATM. You deserve people who actively pour back into you, not just when it's convenient for them, but consistently, with genuine presence, with authentic love, with unwavering truth. And I know it's incredibly hard to let go of people you've poured so much into for years. It's difficult to say no to someone you once held in your arms or shared countless meals with or fervently prayed for late into the night. But you've got to ask yourself, honestly, what is this relationship costing me? Not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually. Am I consistently being left drained? Am I being genuinely respected? Am I being truly seen, or am I just being used? And don't be surprised when these very same people call you selfish the exact moment you stop serving their needs. That's their go-to tactic. That's how they attempt to keep the cycle going. Because as long as they can successfully guilt you, they can continue to use you. But the moment you choose your peace over their performance, the moment you stop being available on demand, that's precisely when they show you who they really are. And when that moment inevitably comes, let it happen. Let them walk. Let them be angry. Let them twist the story if they feel the need to. But you stay rooted in your truth, because deep down you know the truth. You were not made to be used. You were made to be loved. In this significant season of your life, you don't need people who meticulously keep score. You don't need people who only remember you when they're in the midst of a crisis. You need people who remember you in moments of joy, in periods of stillness, on ordinary, everyday days. People who are around not for what you can offer them, but simply for who you are. You've given more than enough in your lifetime. Now, it's your time to receive, not just respect, but real mutual care. And that journey starts by firmly refusing to be anyone's emotional vending machine. So when they come knocking, only when they're in dire need, when they show up with a hand outstretched but never a hand to hold, remember this crucial insight. If their supposed love disappears the moment your resources run out, it was never truly love to begin with. Now let's talk about a group of people that can be the hardest to recognize at first, but once you do, everything suddenly starts to make much more sense. I'm referring to the controllers. These are the individuals who, no matter how old you get, still tend to treat you as if you don't know what's best for yourself. They don't always yell. They don't always make overt demands. Sometimes they even sound like they're genuinely trying to help. But underneath all that expressed concern, what they really truly want is control. And I want you to hear this loud and clear. You do not need to be managed. You need to be respected. It's one of the most subtle yet potent forms of emotional suffocation when someone constantly questions your decisions, consistently undermines your judgment, or persistently tries to run your life under the thin disguise of, I'm just trying to help. But what they're actually doing is systematically robbing you of your dignity, your voice, and your freedom. And in this particular stage of your life, you have unequivocally earned all three. Controllers come in various forms. Some are quite obvious. They're loud, forceful, always attempting to dictate how you should think, how you should feel, or how you should act. But others are much quieter, more insidious. They try to make every single choice for you, not necessarily because they believe in your weakness, but more often because they fear your independence. Because your independence fundamentally threatens their carefully constructed sense of control. And so they'll offer you advice you never asked for, opinions you didn't actually need, and they'll pressure you in subtle ways that make you second guess what you already knew deep down in your gut. You know the kind. You mention you want to travel somewhere, and they immediately say, oh, that's not safe at your age. You casually say, you're thinking of downsizing your home, and they quickly interject, you're not thinking clearly about that. You want to give something away, and suddenly they're in your ear whispering, don't do that. What if you need it later? It's a constant low-level infusion of doubt, cleverly disguised as care. But it's not genuine care, it's about control. And that pervasive control can leave you feeling like a child in your own life. Let me tell you something important. Age doesn't erase your ability to make sound choices. If anything, it refines it. You've lived through wars, through recessions, through profound losses, through joyous births, through heartbreaks and subsequent healing, and through all the ordinary, everyday miracles in between. You've absolutely earned the right to confidently say, I know what I want, and I trust myself to choose it. Anyone who tries to silence that knowing within you is not helping you. They're handling you. And you are not someone who needs to be handled. What makes this dynamic even more painful is that sometimes the controllers are the very people who love you the most. It might be a child who genuinely thinks they're protecting you. It could be a spouse who's grown fearful of change. Perhaps it's a friend who mistakenly thinks they know you better than you know yourself. And because their voice is so familiar, so trusted, you start to listen. You start to doubt yourself. And little by little, your life becomes smaller. Not because you actually wanted less, but because someone else decided you couldn't handle more. But here's what I believe with every fiber of my being. It is not your job to live a life that makes other people feel comfortable. It is your sacred job to live a life that feels right and true in your own spirit. And if that means disappointing the ones who think they know better, then so be it. Your truth is not up for debate. Your freedom is not something you have to earn again and again, repeatedly. You already paid the price for it with years of sacrifice, invaluable experience, and hard-won wisdom. And please don't let anyone confuse your occasional need for support with a need for constant supervision. Yes, we all need help sometimes. That's simply part of being human. But needing help doesn't mean you hand over the keys to your entire life. It means you thoughtfully invite someone in as a partner, not as a warden. Controllers will often act offended or hurt when you gently push back. They'll say things like, "I'm just trying to look out for you." But there's a vast difference between genuinely looking out for someone and actively looking to control them. One is rooted in love, the other is rooted in fear. And you've lived far too much life to let someone else's fear dictate your steps. You deserve to be surrounded by people who trust your voice, who celebrate your choices, who truly believe in your inherent capacity to lead your own life. Because let's be perfectly honest, if they haven't learned to trust you by now, what more do you possibly need to prove? You don't need anyone to co-sign your life anymore. You just need people who will willingly walk alongside you, not attempt to walk over you. And I know for some of you, this means having some admittedly hard conversations. It means summoning the courage to say, "I love you, but I'm going to make this decision on my own." It means letting go of the ingrained need to be constantly understood and choosing instead to be deeply respected. That undeniably takes courage, but it's precisely the kind of courage that sets you free. So if someone in your life is persistently trying to put you in a box, if they're attempting to parent you when what you truly need is a partner, if they're consistently making you feel like your choices are foolish or your dreams are somehow out of reach, stand tall, because this life is still very much yours to live. There's one more kind of person you must be exceptionally mindful of in this particular season of life. These are the ones who stubbornly refuse to grow. The ones who seem permanently stuck in the past, who live in relentless cycles of bitterness, blame, and emotional immaturity, no matter how many years they accumulate. You know the type. They wear their age on their face, perhaps, but not in their spirit. They've learned how to survive, but they haven't learned how to truly evolve. And when you're around them, it's like being inexorably pulled backward. Their world is often small. Their thinking is frustratingly fixed. And their hearts frequently seem closed off. And if you're not careful, they'll try to trap you in that same stagnant place. These are the folks who endlessly gossip about everything and everyone, but never pause to reflect on anything meaningful. They are the ones who love to talk at length about what everybody else is doing wrong, but never stop to sincerely ask what they themselves might need to change. These are the ones who act as if they've got all the answers, but deep down, they're just profoundly scared of genuine transformation. And let me tell you something crucial. Growth doesn't just stop because your hair turns gray. In fact, spiritual and emotional growth becomes even more profoundly important the older you get. Because in this chapter of life, you're not just looking back at the past. You're preparing for something deeper, for profound peace, for unwavering clarity, for a meaningful legacy. But you simply can't walk into that kind of expansive freedom if you're still surrounded by people who stubbornly refuse to evolve. People who still want to fight over petty, insignificant things. People who are still seething with anger over events that happened 20 years ago. People who are still clinging tightly to old offenses like they're medals of honor, when in reality they're just heavy anchors. If you let them, they'll keep pulling you into conversations that no longer serve your spirit, into arguments that have absolutely no constructive purpose, and into mindsets that lead absolutely nowhere. And the undeniable truth is, it's not your job to try and carry them forward if they've consciously chosen to stand still. I know that might sound harsh, but please listen. Your soul wasn't meant to be trapped in someone else's prolonged emotional immaturity. Just because you share a history with someone doesn't automatically mean you owe them your future. There are people who will look at you and say, "Wow, you've changed." And you know what? That might just be the best compliment you could possibly receive. Because if you're not changing, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, you're slowly dying, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. But people who are stuck in their ways don't want to see you evolve. Your growth fundamentally threatens their comfort zone. Your hard-won peace vividly exposes their inner unrest. Your journey of healing painfully reminds them of the difficult work they've diligently avoided for years. Sometimes the hardest people to walk away from are indeed the ones you've known the longest. Not because they're healthy for you, but because they become intensely familiar. They become part of your routine. But mere familiarity is never a valid reason to stay stuck. You can still love someone from a distance. You can honor the shared history without continuing to carry the immense weight of it. I've seen it happen time and time again. Elders who were wise in chronological age but remained stagnant in spirit, full of fascinating stories but curiously empty of genuine insight. They can tell you in detail what happened, but not what it meant. They can list their regrets, but not what they truly learned from them. That isn't wisdom, that's just memory. And memory without meaning simply keeps you in a repetitive loop. And I know you didn't come this far in life just to spin around in circles. You came this far to find peace, to find rest, to pass on more than just tales. You came to pass on truth. But you cannot effectively do that while simultaneously dragging the heavy weight of people who refuse to reflect, refuse to heal, and refuse to let go. Their chaos inevitably becomes your burden. Their unresolved pain becomes your emotional prison. And slowly but surely you'll find yourself watering dead plants, patiently waiting for a change that was never realistically going to come. Let me say something that might be difficult to hear, but is absolutely necessary. Some people are simply not interested in becoming better versions of themselves. They are only interested in being right. And you will waste the very best of your final years fruitlessly trying to convince them of something their heart is not yet ready or willing to receive. That is not your assignment. Your job is not to carry grown adults through emotional growth they are unwilling to undertake themselves. Your job is to walk in peace, to keep growing personally, and to surround yourself with people who are actively doing the same. Seek out people who are genuinely curious, not just stubbornly opinionated. People who are open-minded, not just loud. People who are actively seeking healing, not just endlessly rehearsing their pain. And when you do find such people, you'll notice something remarkable shift within you. You'll start to feel light again, clear-headed, truly alive, because authentic growth inherently creates space. But being around people who steadfastly refuse to grow, that slowly suffocates your spirit. You deserve relationships that feel like a breath of fresh air, not like a heavy, oppressive fog. You need people who challenge you in love, not those who attempt to chain you in fear. And if that means consciously shrinking your circle, then so be it. Because a small circle filled with truth and genuine growth is infinitely better than a large one filled with incessant noise and emotional numbness. So when you find yourself around people who haven't moved an inch in spirit or in heart, people still clinging desperately to bitterness, still blaming the entire world, still recycling the exact same conversations from decades ago, please remember this. There's one more kind of person you must learn to consciously distance yourself from, especially in this sacred and precious season of your life. And that's the ones who actively mock faith, the ones who belittle the very thing that has carried you through countless storms, the ones who roll their eyes dismissively when you speak about God or your spiritual path, who dismiss your deepest convictions as if they're nothing more than childish fairy tales. And I'm not just talking about people who simply believe differently than you do. No, I'm specifically talking about people who actively disrespect your belief. People who seem to take a perverse joy in attempting to tear down what you've carefully built your soul upon. Faith is not weakness. It is profound strength. It's very likely the reason you're still standing today. It's the reason you managed to make it through pain that by all accounts should have broken you. Faith is what held you when people didn't or couldn't. Faith is what gently whispered, "Keep going," when everything around you seemed to be falling apart. And anyone who laughs at that, anyone who treats that sacred inner knowing as foolishness, is simply not someone you need in your personal space, especially now. You see, when we reach this particular stage of life, the questions we ask ourselves tend to get deeper, and the reflections become significantly heavier. You start thinking about eternity, about ultimate purpose, about what truly, genuinely matters beyond the superficial surface of things. You're not just counting years anymore. You're consciously measuring meaning. And in that deeply reflective space, you need people who speak life and encouragement, not mockery. You need people who may not walk your exact same path, but who at the very least respectfully acknowledge and honor it. But some people are so deeply rooted in cynicism that they simply cannot help but scoff at things they don't or won't understand. They'll try to make you feel silly for praying. They'll attempt to make you feel small for believing in something greater than yourself. They'll mock the very essence of what has been your steadfast anchor. And if you let them get too close, their pervasive doubt will inevitably start to seep into your spirit. Not because they're right, but because their voice is often loud and unfortunately constant. Don't you dare let it happen. Don't you let their biting sarcasm shrink your precious faith. Don't you let their careless jokes plant insidious seeds of shame in your soul. Because here's the undeniable truth. Faith is not fragile. It's fire. It's what has kept you alive. It's what has held your family together through thick and thin. It's what has healed your heart time and time again. Faith doesn't make you naive. It makes you grounded. It makes you profoundly wise. And anyone who can't see that simply isn't looking with the right kind of eyes. Some of these people might even be incredibly close to you, a friend you've known for decades, a family member who perhaps grew cold or distant over the years. Maybe it's even one of your own children who now thinks they're far too smart or sophisticated to believe in what they might call old stories. And you love them, of course you always will. But just because you love someone dearly doesn't mean you have to allow them to disrespect what matters most deeply to you. This isn't about engaging in arguments. This isn't about trying to convert anyone to your way of thinking. This is purely about protecting the sacred soil of your soul. Because whatever peace you currently have in your spirit, you fought hard for that. You bled for that. You cried for that. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for why you believe or to whom you pray or what gives you unshakable hope in the darkest of times. You know what's real for you. You know what you've personally been through. You felt the guiding hand of a higher power carry you when nothing else possibly could. You've heard that still small voice in the quiet moments, seen undeniable grace in the times when you perhaps least deserved it. And I truly don't care how educated, accomplished, or supposedly enlightened someone claims to be. If they haven't personally walked through your valley, they simply don't get to laugh at your light. Sometimes, for the sake of your soul, you have to love people from a distance. You can still pray for them. You can still genuinely wish them well, but you absolutely do not have to let them poison your precious peace or shake your firm foundation with their persistent doubt. That is not love. That is spiritual warfare cleverly disguised as casual conversation. And let me tell you something else that's equally important. It's not just about what they say out loud. It's also about the energy they bring, the subtle smirks, the dismissive rolling of eyes, the passive-aggressive comments that incrementally chip away at your peace. Little by little, they diminish you. You deserve so much better than that. You deserve people who genuinely honor your walk, even if they don't personally share it. You deserve people who will sit with you in your truth, not those who try to poke holes in it merely for sport. Because at the end of the day, every single one of us is going to leave this place. Every single one of us. And when that time comes, what will truly matter isn't how many opinions we debated, but how much peace we carried within us, how well we loved, and how deeply we believed. And I truly want you to have that profound peace when you lay your head down at night. And not because life is always perfect, but because your soul is securely anchored, because you didn't allow mockery to steal your reverence, because you held steadfastly on to your faith even when others may have laughed at it. So when the ones who mock what you believe come around, whether they do it with pointed sarcasm or with deafening silence, please remember this. You don't need agreement or validation from others to stay close to God or to your spiritual source. You just need the unwavering courage to guard your faith like the invaluable treasure it truly is. Conclusion. In navigating the rich tapestry of our later years, recognizing these emotional dynamics is paramount. It's about cultivating an environment where your spirit can thrive, unburdened by undue guilt, negativity, exploitation, control, or disrespect. Protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's a profound act of self-stewardship, ensuring your golden years are truly golden. Remember the strength and wisdom you've gathered. Use it to make choices that honor your well-being. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to watch our next videos.